Hey everyone, welcome to Janitor Real Estate. Today I thought I'd try something different, so I'm on my balcony overlooking the beautiful city of Mississauga. So today's topic is something that I discovered a lot of people actually do not know over the course of my conversations with a lot of my clients, and that's closing costs. And if you don't know what closing costs are, that's completely okay, because before I became a real estate agent, I actually did not know what closing costs were either. The only fee that I knew that was associated with real estate transactions was the commission to the realtor. Well, there's actually a lot of costs beyond the commission, and in this video, I'll be explaining them to you. So now that I already touched upon commission, let me talk about it further. So there's a common misconception that commission is actually paid by both the buyer and the seller, but it's actually not true because it's actually only paid by the seller. So the seller has to pay 5% commission. So this gets split in half. So 2.5% goes to the listing agent, which represents the seller, and the other 2.5% goes to the cooperating agent, which represents the buyer. So besides commission, the seller actually has to worry about two more closing costs. The first is the mortgage prepayment charge. So pretty much there are two types of mortgages, an open and a closed mortgage. An open mortgage, you're allowed to pay it at any time you want, but a closed mortgage, you're not. The majority of people have a closed mortgage because it does tend to be cheaper. Since banks make their money on interest and it gets compounded yearly, if you do pay earlier, they'll be earning less interest, which means less profits for them. That's why if you have an open mortgage and there's a possibility for you, the borrower, to pay earlier, they make the open mortgage actually more expensive than the closed mortgage just to compensate for this risk. So if you do have a closed mortgage, you'll be charged usually around 3 months of interest by the bank. So you have to worry about this as a closing cost when you do sell your property. Other closing costs you have to worry about is the real estate lawyer fees. So real estate lawyers are really important in real estate transactions because they ensure the legality of all the documentation and the process itself. They review all the documentations and agreements between the two parties, make sure everything is in order, make sure everything is signed properly, there's all the proper clauses are in there. And if there are conditions to be met by either party, they ensure that those conditions have been fulfilled by that particular party in order for the transaction to proceed. These conditions can be legal, financial, or even things that one party tells the other party to do. For example, there could be a condition to finance. So the lawyer has to ensure that the buyer has adequate financing to pay the seller for the property. Another clause that could be put into an agreement is if the buyer inspects the property and sees that there's something wrong with it and they still want to purchase the property but they want it to be fixed. So they can put a clause in the agreement saying, I will buy this property if the seller fixes this problem. So now let's move on from the seller to the buyer. The buyer does have a few more closing costs that they do have to worry about. The first of which is the real estate lawyer fee. Pretty much the real estate lawyer has the same duties and obligations whether they represent the seller or the buyer, but if they do represent the buyer, they have a little bit more to worry about. The first of which is they have to ensure you have the proper insurance for the property. So this includes fire insurance, title insurance, and home insurance, which is actually another closing cost that you do have to pay. The next is that they have to deal with the taxes. They have to ensure the property tax is up to date. This is because every 4 years, the municipal government actually reassess the value of homes, and this changes the property tax value because they do the calculation on how much property tax you have to pay based on the value of the house. So the other tax that the lawyer has to calculate is the land transfer tax. The land transfer tax is a provincial tax, so anywhere you are in Ontario, you do have to pay this tax, but specifically in the city of Toronto, you have to pay a municipal land transfer tax. This means you have to pay double the amount of tax. And pretty much the calculations are a little bit complicated, so I will be putting it down in the description below. But you don't really have to worry about that because the real estate lawyer does have to calculate it for you and he'll give it to you. So when you do get a mortgage for a property, you have to register it, and that costs about $78. In addition, you have to register the transfer of the property. So that means you have to transfer the name of the property from the seller to your name, so you become the legal owner, and that costs another $78. And as I previously mentioned, you do have to get insurance. That is also part of the closing cost. as well as the land transfer tax that you do have to pay on closing. And another closing cost that the buyer does have to pay is the appraisal of the property. Pretty much an appraisal is the in-person evaluation of the property that you want to purchase. That means they're trying to determine how much that property is worth. An appraisal is a required closing cost because banks need to see the value of the property before they can approve a mortgage. For example, if you get a mortgage for $1 million and the appraised value of that property is only $750,000, then the banks will not approve the mortgage. Why would the banks lend you $1 million for something that is only worth $750,000? So there is one more closing cost that buyers do have to worry about, but it's not a required closing cost, but it's recommended. This closing cost is the inspection of the property. Pretty much during the inspection, an inspector comes to the property to see if there's anything wrong with the property, if there's any leaking, electrical problems, stuff like that. An inspection for the property is really important because you don't want to already move into the house and later down the road you find something wrong with it. Because if the house needs fixing, it usually costs quite a bit of money. But for the majority of the time, an inspection is only a recommendation for older properties because there could be more things wrong with it. If it is a newer property, like less than 5 years old, then I might not recommend an inspection just to save you a little bit of money. So if you are looking to sell your house, be prepared to spend about 5% of the purchase price of the property to pay for commission, as well as about $2,000-$3,000 for both the interest charges for like the prepayment of the mortgage, as well as the real estate lawyer fees. And if you're a buyer, be prepared to pay about 1.5% of the purchase price for closing costs. This is the average amount that I see during my experience working as a realtor. And of course, if you are a first-time home buyer, your closing cost is going to be dramatically reduced. This is because you do get a refund for the land transfer tax, both the provincial and the municipal one if you do decide to move in Toronto. So that means you can be saving almost $8,000 on closing costs just from the tax alone. I just want to thank everyone for watching my video. I hope everyone learned something new and now you guys know what to expect when you do real estate transactions. If you have any questions or inquiries, please comment down below. You can send me a text in my Instagram or phone number or Facebook. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.